Welcome back. As you know, we do all Beatles programming here on Ken Michaels Radio, and Luca Perassi is all over the place. You just can't get enough of him. We just had our last show with Luca to discuss the new book he has out on Paul McCartney's album Press to Play, which I have right here. And not only that, but he discussed Press to Play on the newest episode of Talk More Talk, a Solo-Beatles Videocast. So if you love that album and if you love Luca's work, make sure you watch both those programs. And about a couple weeks ago, I think it was, Luca was here on our channel to discuss this book. This is his next to most recent book, and it's on Ringo Starr, called Ringo Starr, I Play the Piano If It's in C. The Stories Behind the Songs, Volume 1, 1970 through 1997, right here. And we couldn't finish the entire conversation. We couldn't get to everything covered in the book. So we're picking up where we left off. And Luca, welcome back once again.
Thanks, Ken. It seems an endless conversation, but it's always a pleasure. So let's go back to Ringo today, and yeah, there's something more to discuss. As you mentioned, the volume goes up until 1997.
Right.
So there's interesting things left from our previous conversation to discuss.
Right. We went through all the way through Old Wave, the album. So we have the Time Takes Time album to discuss, Unreleased Ringo. I thought we'd talk about the Chips Moman album because you've got all the titles in there in your book of what was recorded in there with whatever information you could dig up on that. And also the one-offs. Sometimes Ringo has a song that appears on an album. It's just one song. It could be some kind of a collection. We talk about those. And we'll do that in our conversation today. So let's start with Time Takes Time, even though chronologically there's stuff before that. But since the next album, once you start volume two, you'll go from Vertical Man on. So the album before Vertical Man was Time Takes Time, which came out in 1992. And there's a couple of quotes here from Ringo where he said, I'm really happy with this album. I've never been this happy since the Ringo album. This one has really worked out well. I'm excited about the songs I'm writing. There's several songs there that are co-writes from Ringo. So, in all the podcasts that I've done and the conversations that I've done about Time Takes Time, I've raved about this album. My co-hosts have raved about this album. Many of us feel it's his best album since Ringo. And he got a brand new record label that he signed up with, Private Music. So, do you believe, as I do and many others do, that this was his best album prior to the Ringo album? Just in general, your opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic album, great production, great songs. It relies on the multi-producer formula,
Hmm.
which could be risky. McCartney too has done this on Flowers in the Dirt, for example, which could be risky as I said, because you never know if there would be a cohesion uh, on the album if you go with different producers. I think in this case it works perfectly. So I was so happy to discover this album at the time when it was released, and it reminds me of this great summer, spring summer when the album was released, and I had the chance to see Ringo in concert for the first time,
Hmm.
and that was because he did a couple of shows in Italy as well. So we went to Brescia to see Ringo, and it was a very emotional moment. So I got nice memories linked to this, and it's a great album. We all know it was not successful in commercial terms, but at that point, it was really a difficult thing to do for Ringo, having a big album as Ringo or Goodnight Vienna in the 70s. Times were different. But yeah, in artistic terms, it's a fine album. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is an album that I point to as one of many from the solo Beatles and a lot of veteran artists where it proves that in some cases it doesn't matter how good the album is. It has a lot to do with who the record companies want to promote or radio stations want to play, and they tend to cater to younger artists because they want to appeal to a younger audience. And he also signed with a fairly small label who probably didn't
Mhm.
have that much money to promote Ringo. Although the video for Weight of the World was played on MTV and VH1 at the time, so it got some exposure that way, but I don't recall hearing it played on the radio in the US, Weight of the World,
Mm,
you know.
yeah. Oh, well, Italy is a different environment, but I remember having heard the song a couple of times, but it was not definitely the exposure that he could have uh, had in the 70s with other materials and stuff. But Weight of the World, by the way, my favorite song on the album, I think it's in the top 10, if not top 5 of my Ringo's songs.
Hmm. It's in mine too in the top 10 because he's made a lot of them. But I was surprised to learn from a quote from Ringo about Weight of the World. Ringo said that it reminded him not so much of a Beatles sound, but more of a Flower Power sound.
Mm,
And he mentioned a wider shade of pale in there, which to him is the ultimate 60s sound. But I don't know, the guitars, the jangly guitars in there, it's very Beatley to me. And as I've said many times on my other shows, if that single had been released in the mid 70s, it would have been a huge hit.
definitely. Yeah, it's perfect. It's a perfect pop production. You mentioned the guitars. Well, the melody is good. I mean, it's you know, perfectly built as a pop song. You know, three parts, intro, riff, everything is in the right place, and also Ringo's vocals are very good. Throughout the book, I mention um, some convincing performances by Ringo on vocals, some less convincing performance to my ears.
Hmm.
This is fine. This is fine. I think he was back on track. We all know what happened in the 80s for him, and we all know that it took his time to get out of the alcohol problem. And so this album shows uh, how he was in a good shape at that point. And yeah, so the songs are really nicely produced and performed, and the enthusiasm I think is all over the place.
Hmm. I get the impression because there are other song titles that are mentioned here, which we'll get to in Unreleased Ringo, that Ringo just said, I'm picking the 10 best songs out of the bunch because they all are strong to me. And, you mentioned the different producers on the album. We had Don Was, Jeff Lynne was on there, Phil Ramone, and Peter Asher. One of the things that I find most striking, and you use the word cohesive, with the exception of Jeff Lynne, I can
Mhm.
tell the difference between the other songs and who produced them. Jeff
Mm,
such a very distinctive sound to his
yeah,
production. No,
yeah,
that Don't Go Where the Road Don't Go has to be a Jeff Lynne song, you know,
yeah.
production. But I find that to be a strength throughout. And actually, since you mentioned Flowers in the Dirt, I really couldn't tell the difference between who the engineers were on all the songs. There's a consistent sound throughout that album. But would you say the same thing? Would you say that, you know, a Don Was production sounds the same as a Phil Ramone or a Peter Asher? Because it's very, very similar.
Uh, I mean, it depends from the degree of skills that someone has. If it's the man on the street, no one can really understand the difference.
Mm.
Maybe with the possible exception of Jeff Lynne, because those drums and the acoustic guitars as a background, which he loves so much, are so distinctive. For all the other songs, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you uh, hear these songs, you cannot necessarily say, "Oh, okay, this is Phil Ramone, this is Don Was." I mean, so in the end, is a cohesive kind of album, probably a bit more than Flowers in the Dirt to my ears,
Hmm.
because when I um, hear something like Rough Ride, for example, uh, to me it's kind of different. Or I won't mention Où est le soleil because I was only on the CD and cassette and not on the
Right.
LP, but it's definitely uh, a different sound.
Okay.
So this album, I think, has a cohesion and it flows very well.
Okay. Um, how much of a role do you think the various musicians, like there's members of Jellyfish on several songs, and that kind of bring a Beatles sound to those songs, and of course they're very heavily influenced by the Beatles. You've also got Andrew Gold on there, who's an interesting choice because um, I'm figuring Peter Asher brought him along since they had a relationship. They worked together in the studio. Um, and so he's on a few of the songs on here. And you even have Brian Wilson
Mm.
on In a Heartbeat, which has such a Beach Boys feel to it.
Obviously, when we talk about Ringo, we are not talking about a composer, strictly speaking.
Right.
It's not McCartney. So these songs are mostly written by other authors, although Ringo is present as an author as well. So when you got other songwriters, um, different producers, they like to lean on a group of people or mm, musicians that they particularly love to work with. So yeah, when it comes to an album like uh, Time Takes Time, the contribution of the various musicians is so important. When you are the main composer, you got maybe strong ideas on how do you want your songs to sound, and you can even dictate things to your musicians.
Mm.
Uh, Paul did it sometimes. In some other occasions, he was very open to the contributions of his group. But sometimes he can be a bit strict and say, no, no, I want this song to sound like that. Uh, in this case, I think that what the musicians could bring to the sessions was fundamental in shaping the sound, definitely. So
Mm.
good choices of musicians, good choices of everything. They really did everything that was needed to have a great album. And so you were mentioning before the small label that Ringo had at the time, not having the budget or the experience uh, to promote this album properly,
Mm.
which is always a key thing, especially when it comes to a market as America. You cannot you cannot fail with promoting a product or having a tight budget. This is this is the path to failure in America for sure. So yeah, I mean, we always mention this aspect of albums or products being not successful commercially because we all know that it's an important aspect, even for someone as Ringo.
Mm.
I remember an interview. Uh, he he gave in the 70s, and he said, "Well, I want to be number one
Hmm.
always." So we don't have to think that because it's Ringo, it's not a composer, and maybe we see McCartney as the you know the main one in these terms. But even for someone as Ringo, it's important to be successful and to know that people are buying your album. It's very important. So I always think that when it comes to pop music, we cannot really uh, consider the commercial success as a secondary factor. Is an important factor. Although obviously it's not something that uh, should uh, uh, mm, have an impact on the assessment that you do about a product. I mean, a product could be very good, but not successful. Then you have to analyze why it wasn't successful if it was a good product. You know, there are key things. One is the quality of your product. The second is the way you promote it. If one of these two elements uh, is not there, then then this it's impossible. It's impossible to reach your goals. I mean, good product, bad marketing, mm, bad results.
Yeah.
Bad product, good marketing, mm, doesn't work as well.
Well, he
Huh.
did tour at this time, and in
Yeah.
fact, with the All-Stars, he performed Weight of the World and he performed Don't Go Where the Road Don't Go. So he didn't ignore this album as he has ignored his more recent material, except for Look Up, where he's now doing the song Look Up in
Mhm.
concert. But most of the time, he barely touches his newer albums. But back then, he was promoting it that way.
Mhm.
So, this is a show to itself to discuss why records are successful and why they're not. But so much of it revolves around what I said, that it's an industry that caters to the youth. And if the record companies and the radio stations feel that it's the youth that are buying the music, they believe that as artists get older, their core audience gets older and they're not buying the records as much, so it's not promoted as much, and you get less and less airplay with every veteran artist. It's not just Ringo and it's not just Paul.
Sure.
You just get thankful when somebody like Paul makes the top 10 or the top three with his albums, but they don't have the staying power that they once did because radio barely touches it. If they do, it's out of respect for a few weeks, and that's it. And you can say that about just about every classic artist that we've grown up with.
Mm.
I only
Yeah.
make the exception with Elton John because Elton John is always recording with new artists of today that are very big, so he still has hits. So, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Can it requires a show in itself to
right?
talk about these things. But yeah, you're right about Elton. Elton has got a way of promoting his material, his career, which is very interesting. And I think it's a right way to me.
Uh-huh.
And that's why some of his songs has got so many streams these days. He did a couple of mashups or whatever they
Right.
are called, and that's a clever way to promote your old songs. Maybe it's different. It's a kind of different thing compared to what Paul McCartney would do. Maybe Paul is more focused on the purity, let me say, of his material, but he did something similar in a couple of times, but
Hmm.
maybe not on the such a large scale as Elton has done with a couple of duets, even recently, or other collaborations.
Right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about Time Takes Time. Um, you talk about someone who was hot at the moment, but In a Heartbeat was written by Diane Warren, who was one of the biggest, most successful female songwriters at the time.
Hmm.
You know, writing for Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, Aerosmith.
Oh yeah.
You know, In a Heartbeat, had Weight of the World done anything as a single, In a Heartbeat had single written all over it to me. It's such a, brilliant recording and just it reminds me a lot of Don't Worry Baby
Mm.
Boys melodically.
Hmm.
But that's someone who and Diane Warren has continued to work with Ringo, writing some
Sure.
songs. Runaways is a very interesting song, considering the subject matter, a very serious matter. Um, and it's interesting that Mark Hudson does backing vocals on there. That's like the beginning of the relationship with Ringo. But this was a time when Ringo was writing with Johnny Warman. And I don't
Mm.
know if you know all that much about him, because all that Ringo ever said was that he was into weightlifting.
Hmm.
But I know he was an artist that Ringo had signed on his Ringo label. Do you know anything more about Johnny Warman?
Not really. Not really.
Hmm. Have to see if we can get him on this channel.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Any?
that would be good. I mean, uh, let me mention, uh, when writing a book on a personality as Ringo, you don't have the same amount of information available,
Hmm.
uh, like in the case of McCartney. So it's kind of a different challenge because sometimes the what you can find on the net, for example, and even digging, it's not the same amount of information that you have on McCartney. And that's another thing uh, about an artist, which is very important. The number of interviews that Paul did over the years are incredible, and that's a way of leaving, traces everywhere. Because we know how it works. Today, you got internet, and there's many things that you can find on the net. It's not easy, but you can find lots of things. And if you search for Paul McCartney, he's all over the place, all over the place. So that's a limit when it comes to artists who uh, were not interviewed so much. So some information even linked to other people who collaborated with them, or the way they work together, blah blah, could be tricky.
Hmm. Do you think that Ringo didn't promote the album as much with interviews for Time Takes Time?
No, at the time, I think he spent quite some time doing interviews, not on the same scale as McCartney, obviously,
Hmm.
but he did some good interviews at the time. So yeah, he was back on track. Also with some with the press, but I think there were a couple of interesting things at the time because I can't remember at the moment. Well, it's mentioned in the book. I can't remember the title of the magazine, but he did an interview with the magazine, and apparently, from what the interviewer wrote, he mentioned something. I don't know what was the matter, or the Beatles, or whatever. Uh, and Ringo was not happy to hear a certain kind of um, question, and so the interview was not good, and they had a sort of a row or something like that. They discussed a bit, and so Ringo is a great uh, man. I love Ringo. I love everybody loves Ringo, and he's got this very simple way of communicating. Is very nice. But if you look at him uh, closely with more attention, uh, is a bit, um, I think, is a bit embarrassed. I mean, it for him, it's a being in the spotlight for him is not that easy as it seems. So he jokes a lot, and so it's a way that I have found interesting uh, because it seems that he jokes because he hates to be in the spotlight. In the end, it's a double-faceted thing because being in the spotlight could be a fuel, could be very nice,
Uh-huh.
and on the other side, you're forcing yourself to some extent. Even Paul forces himself a bit, although it's a big personality. He knows what he's doing, but it's not that natural being always in the spotlight. And for him, for Ringo, it was a bit different because he came out from this mm, dark period. And
Yes.
so then you got to be accustomed to journalists, to press, to the same old questions, or to something that is not really what you wanted to hear, blah, blah. So, I mean, doing a press interviews is an art in itself.
Hmm.
And so it needs time to be perfected. And so probably for Ringo at the time, it was good to be back with the press. He did some good appearances. He could have done more, but I think it was the best he could do in that particular moment.
Hmm. I just think that he's naturally funny when he's on camera.
Mhm.
He has a way of saying things that are funny when it's kind of like Yogi Berra was in baseball. He would make some comment that makes sense but really doesn't make sense, but it's funny. Um, and I just think that he's very natural in front of a camera, although I think when he needs to be serious, he doesn't really enjoy it that much. He'd rather be entertaining. He likes being an entertainer, and maybe being funny is his way of, I don't know if it's being defensive, but he
Mm.
wants to be enjoyable, an enjoyable person to talk to. He'll never badmouth anybody publicly, for example.
No,
That's his
no.
style. He's easygoing, he's fun. That's the kind of image that Ringo wants to project. And to some degree, I'm sure he's that way. But, I just think that he's very, he can just off the cuff, say very funny lines in
Mhm.
an interview. And I think I think he likes being the center of attention.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is being in front of a camera, acting. We
Hmm.
all know that is a good actor. One maybe different is uh, as you were mentioning, maybe speaking it seriously about your product and
Hmm.
promoting yourself. This is different, and I think it's more difficult for him compared to Paul
Yeah.
to promote himself and the product. Paul masters the whole art of promotion as no one probably else. Ringo, it's a bit different. So natural, yes, act naturally, but acting, uh, talking about your records, different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like for him to have a very serious conversation about his music, you know, picking.
Did you interview Ringo, right?
I have, but they've all been short interviews. It's
Hmm.
usually for whatever the new album is. I'd like to do something which is mainly about his solo career, especially about his songwriting. You had just said that, you don't really see Ringo as a songwriter. Well, he's not in the same category as John, Paul, and George, but he has done quite a lot of songwriting, even up to the point of Time Takes Time. He did a lot with Vinnie Poncia in particular. But, from Vertical Man on, he's co-written almost everything he's released. So, I'd like to know a lot more about that. And
Hmm.
I don't know how much he's willing to divulge about it. I don't know how analytical he is of his own work. He just wants to have a good time and enjoy what he's doing,
Hmm.
concentrate on putting out good songs. But I just don't know how serious and in depth he can get about himself. I wish I could learn more about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect, definitely can, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a book on Ringo,
Hmm.
because we know he's not a composer, full-time composer, but if we take a look at the songs included in this first volume, there are 40 songs uh, uh, written or co-written by Ringo.
Hmm.
So the way he contributed, we don't really know. We know something about the early hits, Don't Come Easy or Back of Boogaloo,
Right.
uh, but we don't know about the rest. So we don't know much about the rest. So we don't know if we contributed lyrics, maybe mainly lyrics, or some of the music. Who came up with the initial idea of
Right.
the songs when he wrote or where he was co-writing with Vinnie Poncha. Vinnie Poncha was a fantastic songwriter.
Hmm.
So, but who knows? Maybe Ringo came up with an idea and Vinnie turned it into a proper song because he really masters the art of songwriting. But yeah, I agree. It's an interesting thing. Who knows if there would be a chance, or maybe he's not interested to push on this aspect. And Ringo is Ringo. I mean, you can define him. I don't know, a drummer. It would be not enough. Uh, an actor. It's a really a character, and so it's very recognizable. And part of his art is also songwriting.
I think he probably would be most comfortable if he's thought of as a drummer first above everything that he's done.
Sure.
So, yeah, but yeah, I did an interview on the Things We Said Today podcast with Gary Burr, who shared a lot about the songwriting with the Roundheads, with Ringo and Mark Hudson and Steve Dudis and him and who contributes what. And so that's something I would point to if you want to learn more about certainly that period
Sure.
with Ringo. Anyway, let me point out a few one-offs. These are all tracks that Ringo's done on other albums, compilations of some kind. There's a couple of tracks that you brought up here. You Know It Makes Sense and Naughty Atom Bomb. And that was
Hmm.
from an album called It's a Living World, an anti-heroin project. This was a double album that came out. And in fact,
Yeah.
Paul McCartney contributed his own song, Simple as That, in there. So it's interesting. I'm glad that it's mentioned here in the book. This was to fund the Phoenix House Charity, which was a drug rehab center. Is there
Hmm.
anything more that you know about those two tracks that you can share?
No, really, they are mentioned. There's not much information. I could remember I bought this double album. Uh, I think that was around December '86, something like that.
Hmm.
And I found it in a shop, and it was a double. So yeah, quite expensive. But I saw there was one track by Paul and two by Ringo. So I said, well, who cares about the rest? I'm going to have this album. I don't think I've ever listened to the rest of the album, really. I thought there are some good songs and stuff, but I must admit I only bought it for because also a collector.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, one of the two tracks is really a sort of a spoken message, something like that. It's not really a memorable thing. But anyway, the fact that Ringo was involved and he said yes to this kind of charities, I found it interesting. Is a human aspect that is very interesting because I think it's not easy for an artist like that when you got so much money and being involved in this kind of things. It seems obvious, but there are many people who don't care about these things. And when you are involved in such a thing, uh, yeah, I always feel that it says a lot about the man.
Absolutely. I enjoy learning about all the charitable works of the Beatles and other artists too. But for those who are curious, you wrote that the idea for this album came from Charles Foskett,
Yeah.
British composer and producer, and he gathered together a number of pop stars from McCartney to Ringo. The Eurythmics are on there, Elvis Costello, Dire Straits, a whole bunch of great artists on there.
Yeah, so in some cases they just took some previously released songs, but in the case of McCartney and Ringo, there's are new compositions or whatever we want to call, or offered for the occasion, which is interesting anyway. And in
Mm,
the case of McCartney, was a specific song composed for the project, which
right.
again,
I love McCartney's song. Nice reggae feel to it.
oh yeah,
And then we have Act Naturally with Buck Owens. Interesting thing that I didn't even know until I saw it in your book was that Ringo doesn't drum on there.
uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, there have been some questions I have been asked about. Well, why Ringo, or I read somewhere why Ringo didn't drum on his own in the 70s, why he does not drum on his own during the shows, live shows. I mean, there are different things, different reasons. Obviously, when it comes to the live shows, you cannot have Ringo singing and drumming at the same time, even especially these days. I mean, it doesn't make sense. If you want to do a proper singing, you can do it drumming. You gotta be in your 30s or 40s or 20s.
Yeah,
When it comes to the records that he had in the 70s, we have to consider he was recording in America, and I think the rules of the union prevented him to be the only drummer on a record. Because if you're a group, if you're a band,
mm,
you can do it. But if you're an artist, you cannot have the place of an American musician. So there are some rules, and so they did drum together with Jim Keltner
right.
and other drummers in his records. He always, I think, in the 70s, he always recorded outside the UK. He never recorded in the UK. So Berkham's Blues was recorded obviously in
Nashville.
Nashville, and he didn't drum as well on the album. And he drummed always with a second drummer in all of his other albums. So I don't know why they've chosen not to have Ringo as a drummer. In the case of this song, Act Naturally. Anyway, no, it was just a tribute thing that he wanted to do, and I think it's very nice.
Yeah, I didn't know that about America, that you couldn't have two drummers on the same session if you're your own artist as opposed to a band. But it says here Jim McCarty from the Yardbirds is the actual drummer on Act Naturally there, which I hadn't.
Mhm.
Interesting
Yeah,
tidbit of information.
I always like to to put in the books the list of musicians, which is on the one hand is a way of crediting everybody. On the other hand, is a piece of information that interests many people.
Hmm,
And so I always think it's a good it's an interesting box when you see the musicians in uh, mentioned in a book.
right. Okay. One of my favorite songs from him, in fact, one of my wedding songs, is You Never Know,
Uh-huh.
came from the soundtrack of Curly Sue. Um, all that I basically know about the recording are who the songwriters are. Steve Dorff, who is the father of the actor Steven Dorff, who played Stu Sutcliffe in Backbeat, and and John Bettis, who I know for writing a lot of songs for the Carpenters.
Hmm.
The two of them, Steve Dorff and John Bettis, wrote the theme to Growing Pains, the TV show in America, As Long as We've Got Each Other. So, and Steve Dorff has had a long history of writing a lot of hits, as has John Bettis. But it's such a great song and a great performance from Ringo vocally, and the whole production is wonderful. Um, is there anything that you
Yeah.
know about that song?
No, I mean there are these little surprises in Ringo's catalog, and um, sometimes hard to detect. I mean, it's not really easy to collect these things.
Hmm.
And so, in the case of Ringo, there are not many, but there are songs that you can overlook quite quite easily. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I spent quite a lot of time uh, being sure that all the songs were in the book, including because it's very easy maybe to forget something, or you don't remember, or maybe you didn't collect it at the time, which is a very important aspect, because if you didn't collect something at the time of the release, then you got sort of a uh, blurred memories and stuff. It's more difficult if you don't collect these things when they are released. At least for me, you
Hmm.
know what I mean. So,
Even if you study this stuff intently, it's very possible to forget things. It's
oh yeah,
they've recorded so
no,
much music.
I always double check with people who help me on these things, because you be cannot be the one man band kind of work. You need people to double check. You need help, and so this is definitely one thing I treat with care. Having someone double checking the list of songs for me
Hmm.
once I have them, because it's also an aspect of organization. So sometimes it's not easy to understand where a song must be placed or could be placed in a book,
Hmm.
because there are maybe eras or group of years that are empty of albums or releases. So you said, well, uh, a chapter for just one song, maybe not.
Hmm.
Maybe let's put it in another chapter. So there's quite a lot of work on the organizational aspect, and being sure that all the songs are there. It's very important. Uh, as I did for McCartney, I don't include the collaboration and stuff, with some notable exception. I mean, the Act Naturally single that you had mentioned, it's collaboration. It's part of the Ringo discography, something in the middle. So I said, well, okay, let's put it in, because it's such an important song.
Right.
So I think it was worth.
there's so many songs that Ringo's drummed on for other people and was strictly the drummer. And to include all that, well, there are books that cover that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So I'm grateful that we have those to keep track of it all. So let's talk a little bit about the Chips Moman album. You wrote that a total of 14 tracks were recorded by Ringo with Chips Moman, and the sessions were videotaped because of the presence of superstars like Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan, Dave Edmunds, and Carl Perkins. Would love to see those videotapes.
And I'll talk about it in a minute.
Uh-huh. Um, Chips or Ringo proposed to make three albums with him. I wasn't aware of that. It was supposed to be much like Buku's of Blues, with it said Ringo singing to already pre-recorded backing tracks. So he didn't want to be in the studio live with these musicians? Or
I mean,
originally he thought,
it's it's 1987. So the main reason why these sessions were not successful was the fact that Ringo was not in his best shape. Let
right.
me put it this way. And secondly, he didn't get on well with Chip Moman, with Chips Moman. It's a silly thing, but I mean, they just said Ringo and Chips. They both said they couldn't understand each other when they were talking because of the accents. So they couldn't understand. So Ringo came back after the first meeting with Chips, or the first session, and he said, this is going to be a disaster. I'm not understanding a word that he's saying. So it seems a silly thing, but I can understand uh, the difficulty in communication when it comes to, I don't know, the language, different languages. I mean, I think I don't have a specific knowledge of all of American accents.
Hmm.
I know there are different accents. It's a big country, but even in a small country like Italy, we have a lot of different accents. And I can tell you, can if someone speaks a dialect in Italy from the south and he speaks his dialect with me, I would not be able to understand a word, for example,
Yeah.
or even the other way around. I mean, it's not. So they found difficult to understand each other, and so someone said that Ringo didn't want to drum because he was not in the best shape and blah blah. So in the end, it went up in smoke. This project. Uh, there are a couple of songs which were uh, put out on YouTube and bootlegs, and that's
Mhm.
why I was able to describe. All the rest of the stuff is locked, if not destroyed. There was a lawsuit between Ringo and Chips Moman about this things because Chip wanted to to release this material on the grounds that it could have been a great success, and so financially could have been great for him, great for Ringo. But Ringo opposed the idea, and in the end, he won in court, and so they didn't release the album. Probably it's not something it's worth listening to. But you know, in historical terms, it would be for us. But then, if the artist doesn't want to this material to go out, I think is he has the the right to say no. This is not what I wanted to do. This is not Ringo. This is not me. Uh, we don't publish these songs anyway. It's I mean, it was an attempt for him to get out of the dark. He was not out yet. He needed rehab.
Right.
to go out. But then it was a first step. Okay, let's try to work and see what happens. Then apparently everybody in the studio were drinking heavily, and so as I told many times in other interviews, uh, drinking is a or even drugs. I mean, is the enemy of playing good music. There are some people who can play if they're drunk or whatever. I don't like it. I don't like even the idea of doing this. And this Memphis sessions for Ringo were the prime example of the fact that you gotta be sober to do good things.
Right. I just find it interesting because so many years, the Buku's of Blues album has gained in stature. A lot of people have wanted Ringo, sorry, to record another country album. So here he made an attempt. It's not as if Look Up, which he just released, that was the first attempt since Buku's of Blues. He actually was recording this in Nashville. So he was thinking about it back then. And I've heard the songs that have been bootlegged. There's five of them. They don't sound that good. Ringo's vocals aren't that great. I mean, they're passable, but they're not certainly not up to snuff as far as strong enough to release.
Mm.
Even sounds like they're not from a master tape. I don't think it was mixed too well. So I'm glad that the album never came out. But just the idea that he was thinking about doing a country album again, I find interesting. But have you heard all those? You've heard those songs, the ones that have,
Yeah, yeah, the one that were put on the YouTube or bootlegs. Yes, oh,
right,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a country album. Mm, yeah, it was recorded in Memphis, which I think it was a main attraction, or probably the project behind was okay. Let's make something countryish. Who knows? We don't know about the other tracks. We don't know about the arrangements and stuff. So yeah, but I think the quality level of Book of Blues is really unmatchable. That was really the country album. Although I like the last one. I want to be clear. I've heard it and it's very nice. But 100% country album, Book of the Blues. It's really it's really an enjoyable one. But then again, at least it was an attempt to go back to something healthy. So doing good music. Then
right,
they didn't they didn't succeed, and so we have to wait until time takes time. But it's always fascinating to see uh, how a career uh, mm, could be could be shaped, the highs and lows, and both in artistic terms and from a human point of view. Behind the music, there's always a man. So, especially in the case of Ringo, it's easy to follow what happened over this nearly, 30 years or something like that.
right. Um, it's interesting. There's a song on there called Hard Times, which has been leaked out, and Eric Clapton plays guitar on it.
Hmm.
And Ringo covers I Can Help. Odd thing about that song is I always loved the song by Billy Swan. Was a number one hit in 1974 in the US. It wasn't until years later people said to me, you ever realize that sounds like Ringo? And I never thought about that. And when I listen to it now, yeah, I can hear that. So it's funny that he attempted to do that song. And kind of ironic because Billy Swan wrote two songs on the new album for Ringo.
Mm, 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 mm.
So
Yeah, things go around in circles sometimes.
you also talk about the track that has Bob Dylan on it, which I found really interesting because it doesn't say in your book if Dylan wrote it, but apparently Bob was not happy with the recording at all, and he quickly left the studio after he cut his vocals.
The credits are not available for all the songs. Well, I mean the songwriting credits. So when there's no information, just put a question mark, which is, I found it more respectful than attempting something which is not correct.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, Bob was not happy, and there's a funny episode about it because he went out of the studio. I don't know if they had a discussion or whatever. And so Ringo asked, "Where's Bob?" And they said, "Well, he's gone out." And so yeah, he never came back. I mean, and Ringo said, "Well, it's fine. I mean, whatever was a reason, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. So you don't have to force things." And I think one of the things that we can learn from Ringo and the Beatles is the fact that things go the way they have to go, and they never forced anything. And that's a magic of music and life as well.
Hmm.
So don't force things because you can you can be very focused and driven and having your goals and stuff, but the best things come naturally. And so Bob was not happy, and he said, "Okay, fine." He didn't try to reach for him, uh, for days or something. So yeah, so not such a great track. Yeah,
Hmm.
not such a great track.
Okay. For anyone interested, you have a whole list of songs that were attempted during these sessions. I'll read them real fast. Scotch and Soda, it's a cover there. Shooby Dooby Doo Da Day, Stevie Wonder song. I would have loved to have heard Ringo sing that one. Some Kind of Wonderful, which is probably the Drifter song. Ain't That a Shame? That's something because both John and Paul covered Ain't That a Shame.
Yeah,
I Can See Clearly Now, the Johnny Nash song. I Can Help. You Better Move On, which is the Arthur Alexander song, which the Stones covered. Um, You Were Great, How Was I? Don't know what that was. Freelance Lover, Real Man, Pass It On, and the one with Bob Dylan. I wish I knew now what I knew then.
yeah. I don't know. As I told you, uh, it's hard for me to imagine it as a straightforward forward country album because
Yeah.
you mentioned the Stevie Wonder song. How can you turn this into a country thing? I mean, everything is possible when it comes to arrangements, but
Yeah.
who knows what really Chips Moman had in mind for Ringo? Who knows if, apart from the problems and the issues that we have mentioned, who knows if could have been a good move? Maybe you go out, do this kind of album, it's uh, it's not a success, and then it's even worse than before. You know what I mean? So in the end, I think we must be grateful for Time Takes Time because there was a right kind of album even for him. I mean, when you listen to a playback of your own album and Time Takes Time goes on the speakers, you must be proud of it. So I think that is a good fuel for an artist and for Ringo. I think it was very important.
Yeah, it really was the start of what I call a renaissance period for him because he's
Hmm.
put out quality stuff ever since then. And we could all debate about all the stuff after, say, Ringo or Goodnight Vienna in the 70s, because there's a lot of stuff on there I like, and Old Wave and Stop and Smell the Roses. But I do think that from Time Takes Time on, he was really putting the effort in quite a lot.
Yeah.
So let's go through some of the unreleased songs. We'll try to do this fairly quickly here, because in some cases, we've never heard them before. Some we have. First of all, going back to Sentimental Journey, there's Stormy Weather, which has been bootlegged and it's out there
Hmm.
on YouTube. What do you think of the recording of that?
It's a terrible recording. I mean, there's even a bad flat note by Ringo on this one. So, well, anyway, it's interesting for me to listen to anything that an artist puts out. I mean, from an historical point of view, it's good to have this thing bootlegged.
Yeah, well, there are people out there who are completists who have to try and find everything, whether it's good or bad. Stormy Weather, to me, I can understand why that was left off. Because not only, well, towards the very end, there's Ringo going flat on one note,
Mm,
but the drummer really overplays on it. So many
yeah,
fills throughout the whole song. It's like he's trying to impress, I think. But
yeah, yeah.
then there's The Wishing Book from Bukuza Blues. That's a really pretty song, which I think
Mm,
was worthy of being released. But I think the recording, it could have been a better recording or a better vocal.
yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, these things are have been included in the book because it's always interesting to know what was going on behind the scenes or what was you know left aside. I've always been fascinated by unreleased stuff. So you mentioned that in some cases the songs I'm mentioning are not available. Anyway, it's good to have them mentioned in such a book. You know.
Right. You never know when they may turn up.
Mm,
Something rather interesting here is about the songs that Ringo worked on with Russ Ballard.
mm.
And this happened after or during the Bad Boy sessions, or maybe just
Yeah,
right
it was
after Bad Boy.
78, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have heard two of them.
Hmm.
She's So in Love and One Way Love Affair,
Hmm.
all written by Russ Ballard. And
Yeah.
Russ Ballard also wrote As Far as We Can Go,
Yeah.
which later turned up
Hmm.
on Old Wave. So, the story behind that, do you want to give the details
Yeah. Uh,
with Russ?
First, let me say that it could have been a great collaboration because the tracks that you mentioned are very good, and unfortunately, they have to stop um, recording together because of personal problems by Russ Ballard, and so they never came back to work again together. Could have been nice for Ringo. As far as we can go, great track. And fortunately, they have released them it after. So it's a very nice version with a very nice arrangement. So it's a shame that they couldn't do more together.
Yeah, especially One Way Love Affair, I think was really strong.
Mm,
Really good pop song. Uh,
hmm.
I never heard, there's one called On the Rebound. I've never heard that one. And She's So in Love is an okay song.
Mm,
Needed to be worked on a
yeah,
little bit more. But still,
nice.
all these things, you never know if any of these songs, when they turn up, are better than you thought they would be. So
Uh-huh.
then you question why didn't someone like Ringo release this on the album at the time? But it's a shame. It would have been interesting to see a full album with the two of them.
it depends also from who owns the masters of these things and stuff. I mean, sometimes we think that the artists always own the masters. It's not it's not always the case. So I'm not saying that he didn't own the masters, but sometimes the reasons why some artists could not release the material is because they don't own the masters or whatever, So sometimes it happens.
Hmm.
So who knows that maybe there will come a time for a Ringo kind of anthology one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd love to hear some of this stuff, whether it's good or bad. Just,
Yeah.
have that hunger. Um, then finally, we go to Time Takes Time and the other songs that were worked on at the time. We have to talk about Angel in Disguise, which
Hmm.
was written by Paul and Ringo. And
Yeah.
as many fans watching this know, a couple of years ago, there was a demo that Paul made that he gave to Ringo, which was bid on at an auction. And so for a brief time, you heard part of Paul's demo. I'm not sure how much, 30 seconds or a minute or something.
Yeah. 30 seconds, I think that was. Yeah. Well, it was a very rough demo, so piano and then an electronic drums
Yeah.
on that demo. Not the best song in my opinion. Uh, and as we were mentioning about the way Ringo uh, was co-writing, this is an example of Ringo just adding words, not contributing to the music, because the music was by Paul. So he added a verse, and that's his contribution. But that doesn't seem to me it works. So I think they were right in not releasing it. And Ringo was adamant at the time and said, "You don't have to think that because it's a McCartney thing or me and Paul, it's the best thing in the world, and we got to release it. We didn't release it because it didn't fit
Hmm.
with the rest of the album. So if it was a great song like Attention, it would have been released. From what I've heard, not kind of material that can uh, can make you say, "Wow, what a song!" It's not. It seems a bit forced, but who knows? We never heard the arrangement, the final arrangement, so we don't really know. Based on the demo, it's kind of sketchy,
Right.
and I think the melody seems a bit silly. I don't know. Uh, another candidate for the anthology.
Yeah, it's hard to know. How can you judge a song when you've only got a snippet of it, So I mean, you get a rough idea, but you don't get a full idea. And like,
Sure.
you don't have the arrangement and the full production behind it. Where did you find out that Ringo wrote the words or a verse?
There was an interview where he said, "I've added a third verse to what Paul presented to him."
Oh, okay.
There's an interview of him. I think it's in the book.
All right. Now, one that I'm glad you put in here. Thank you for being a friend. Now, we mentioned Andrew Gold before. Andrew Gold, for anyone that doesn't know, had a big hit in the 70s called Lonely Boy. Was a great studio musician. Peter Asher worked with him. He played on, Linda Ronstadt, You're No Good,
Mm,
over that
yeah.
song. And Thank You for Being a Friend was also a hit for him, though it didn't chart as high as Lonely Boy, but everybody in the world knows the song because it was used for the Golden Girls as a theme,
Mm,
not Andrew's version of it. But it's truly a great song. And I'm sure that, like I said, Andrew Gold was probably put into the picture because of Peter Asher. Uh,
yeah.
and I would have liked to have heard this version. I interviewed Peter a few years ago and I brought up this recording and he said he didn't remember whether or not they recorded it.
Mm,
So, you know,
yeah. Mentioned in the title, then yeah, who knows what they did? I mean, sometimes when this title lick. Um, they don't know what really was done on the sound. You can say, okay, it's been recorded, but then maybe not to the point of being mixed, whatever. So, while asking people about uh, songs, sometimes it could be difficult because it, it's a job, and sometimes uh, you can forget easily things.
Well, I'd be curious to hear this if it did,
Oh yeah.
if it was recorded. I can't hear Ringo doing that song, but you never know. There's one called Love Is Gonna Get You, which was written by Phil Pickett, who was the co-writer of Karma Chameleon for Cold.
Mhm. And he also played with Paul in 87, I think. He was involved in some sessions with McCartney, Phil Pickett.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's one that we haven't heard. And
Hmm.
then a song called Call Me, which is not the same one that Ringo
Yeah.
did with Midnight Vienna, and Jeff Lynne produced that. And Tom Petty's on it.
Hmm. Yeah. All these people that love Ringo so much, and it's so easy for him to attract people. It's so easy. It's a great characteristic of Ringo, and because everybody is happy when they could be around him. That's uh that's a that's a good thing that has nothing to do with his wealth or fame or whatever. It's the fact that he's an agreeable person, and people love to do things for him, you know.
Right. Okay. Does say here that Jeff Lynne has said that that song, Call Me, will never be released.
That's an enigmatic statement. He he has his reason, I think, to say this.
Probably wasn't pleased with the song at all, but
Yeah, yeah,
anyway, so I think that covers everything that I wanted to discuss. Oh, one more thing, which I didn't know about till today. I'm glad I remembered because I can be very forgetful. That you're involved with a book on Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
yeah. I've co-written this new book, which is part of the Milestone series, and it's called "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road: The Making of an Epic Album," which uh, keeps in line with the other titles of the series. So my Band on the Run one, my Press to Play one, and book on XTC Skylarking, which was written by my friend and journalist Alfredo Marziano. So this is a fourth book in the series. We worked with Andrea Grasso, which is a big collector of Elton, big expert, and so obviously I needed a hand for putting together such a book, and we were able to compile, I think, what I call as a veritable account uh, of this milestone, which is a milestone. Is
Hmm.
an album I've always loved,
Yeah.
and so there are interesting things like we were able to include all the recording dates of the songs for all the songs, which is a you know you and me and many other people are passionate about this kind of details.
Yeah.
So when it comes to an album like that, having the exact recording dates for each song is quite an achievement. So we also have included some of the track sheets that um, were available for the songs. Putting together interviews, quotes from back in the day, from DVDs, documentaries, newspapers. Uh, so yeah, I'm very happy that. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is part of the family of milestones. And yeah, so uh, it's another in the series. There will be some more. Uh, Maybe I can disclose some of them now because I put out a press release where I'm mentioning the next volumes. There will be one on Regatta de Blanc by the Police,
Huh,
not by me. I mean, I'm not writing all these books. There will be another author. Uh, I am authoring a book on Back to the Egg, so Wings Back to the Egg. So
very
stay
nice.
tuned. There will be a, a book on George Harrison self-titled album, and there will be a book on Year of the Cat by Old Stewart. That's the next four books in the series. So plenty of reading and interesting stuff to build this nice series.
Where do you find the time for all these books?
The Elton John one was ready since 2 3 months, but we have to wait for
Uh-huh.
a better time to put it out, and it took quite some time. And I mean, I'm not authoring everything by myself. In this time, I've co-authored and coordinated the whole project and stuff. It needs to be coordinated. It needs to be built step by step. So after many years of experience, now I can lead a project with timing when everything is needed to finish a book because the ideas are many. Finishing an idea is the most difficult part. It's the same for a song with a song. It's the same kind of thing. Book or song, it's a project in the end. So you know, I'm happy that all these things are coming to fruition. So thanks for mentioning and everything that everything who is interested can check it out the book on Amazon.
Okay. Just one thing about Goodbye Old Brick Road. I know you mentioned archival interviews. Did you get to interview Davy Johnstone or
No, the musicians we have contacted were not available, and but my co-author was able to interview David Payton, who worked with Elton live. So we just asked him a couple of things about the live renditions of the songs of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Hmm.
And in back, there was a illustrator of the famous cover. So we have a couple of original interviews as well in the book.
Very good. I'll have to find time to read that one too. I mean,
Yeah.
all my Beatle books. The Beatle books never stop.
Oh no.
All right, Luca. Once again, let me remind everybody the name of the book here, Ringo Starr. I played the piano if it's in C, the stories behind the songs, 1970 to 1997. And don't forget, Press to Play, fantastic album, and plenty of shows we've done with Luca on Press to Play, and all of his other stuff. Paul McCartney, Music is Ideas, the stories behind the songs, 2 volumes there, his book on Ben on the Run. There's plenty to dive into from and more to come too.
Yes.
Luca, thanks so much for being here, and we'll talk to you, I'm sure, very soon. Probably when Back to the Egg comes out. But
Yes.
thank you so much for being here, and a big thank you, of course, to everybody watching.
Thanks, Ken. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.